your name, awesome, your name, and as well as the organization you are working with. And just as a heads up, this will be a recorded session, and we'll be sharing this after the meeting is over. We'll be sharing it with you all. Our team will be monitoring the chat for questions. So as we're covering any details during the presentation, feel free to use that space to ask any clarifying questions, and we'll make sure to get to them. And then if you have any questions during the presentation, you're also welcome to use the raise hand function, and we'll call on you and you could ask your question then. If you prefer, we also have dedicated time at the end for Q&A, and that's an excellent time to ask any clarifying questions as well. Thank you. As for introductions on our side, my name is Roda Sheikh. I am the Finance and Operations Manager for OIRA. It is so lovely to meet you all. We also have my lovely colleague joining us, Almadea Michelena, who's our Senior Grants and Contracts Specialist, Shelpa Salgar, who's our Special Projects and Policy Specialist, and Lin Win, who's our Administrative Assistant. And we're all working together to make this presentation go smoothly. So in terms of the agenda, so we have the welcome logistics. I'll be talking about the RFP background, just providing context, talking about the difference between this RFP, and the one that I mentioned previously, the Immigrant Safety and Access Network RFP. I'll go over the proposal overview, and then I'll pass it over to Almadea, who will walk through the submission instructions and the dates, and also walk us through the Q&A period. Thank you. So this Victim Compensation Fund is a one-time fund that's being established to respond to the increase in hate crimes and targeted violence within immigrant communities, but really focusing on Asian American Pacific Islander groups. So this initiative is really a direct response, this initiative is a direct response to a listening session that Director Hamdi Mohammed and Director Tanya Kim from the Human Services Department had with various community organizations and community-led groups within the API communities in 2023 to hear about the different issues and the violence that API communities have been experiencing since the start of the pandemic. And it was really an opportunity to highlight urgent financial support or urgent needs that arise as a result of those instances of violence. And so, we're talking about things like home invasions, physical assaults, robberies, muggings, and other sort of instances of targeted violence against AAPI communities. But it's also, I think one of the questions that we will likely get is this, can everyone apply? Can all organizations apply? The answer is yes. But the focus of this RFP is specifically for API communities, but it is open for other organizations, for other immigrant and refugee communities. So that's the main distinction I would make. There's also the Immigrant Safety and Access Network RFP that's taking place simultaneously. That one is ongoing programming that builds off of our previous program, the Immigrant Family Institute, IFI, which has been a program within OIRA for a while. So ISAN is now the new program that will continue beyond 2024 and 2025, hopefully, and so on and so forth. That ISAN program is focused on providing financial assistance to all immigrant and refugee community members who are victims or families of victims of gun violence and or sudden instances of sudden death. So I can go to the next slide. Thank you. So This RFP is to identify organizations that are already providing services to AAPI communities in which these incidents have occurred. The reason for that is I think it is challenging to stand up new programming with smaller dollars, and we understand that as community-based organizations. There's a lot that you're navigating. There's capacity constraints, and so using existing models that might exist within organizations is what we're hoping to identify. And so highlighting that in your application, in your RFP application, of existing services that you might offer would be great. And the program will be providing cash assistance to individuals who have been victims of violence and or their families. If you go to the next slide. So the funding available in total is $150,000 that we're hoping to award to 3 to 5 organizations based off of the applications that we receive. That will determine how many organizations will be funding, but each organization will receive between $30,000 and $50,000. Again, that will be determined based off of application reviews. And the hope is that the funds would be distributed by the end of this year. We've received feedback that there is we understand that the need is real. The need is, it's important to get these resources out to people who need them early, as soon as possible. And so the hope is to get the cash distributed by the end of this year. So some of the eligible services and service activities include medical counseling related expenses, any funeral or burial costs, relocations, housing support, loss of wages, property damage, purchase of safety equipment, such as additional door locks, bars or windows, or other sort of security measures or needs that might arise. But it's not limited to these, but it definitely does include them. Slide, and I will pass it over to Amadea.
Okay, so I'll go on to talk about the eligible applicants. So you need to be a community-based, like a 501c3 organization or community-based organizations with a fiscal sponsorship by a 501c3. Eligible applicants must comply with applicable federal, state, and local non-discrimination laws and standards, including having non-discrimination hiring practices in place. And further, the applicant shall not require payment from participants for services provided. So all your services should be free, and require participants to participate in a religious service or activity as a condition of receiving services. Next slide, please. So the application is really pretty straightforward and only consists of five questions. There's no budget required because there's, the majority of the funds, 80% is required to be distributed as cash assistance. And the remaining would be used for administrative. But the application questions are straightforward. The first, or if you have any questions, please feel free to chime in. So you're to describe the community that you intend to serve, including specific geographic area, racial and ethnic demographics, and the languages spoken, etc. Anything to help us kind of get an idea of what your organization is doing and how they're serving the community. So does your organization already serve clients who have experienced violence or identity-based harm? And please describe this. And because we do, though, honor client privacy, please describe it in general terms. Everything should be de-identified and as general as possible. And what are your current programs or services for helping the community members who have experienced harm from violence or identity-based harm? So maybe talk about what, likely you're not just providing one service, but perhaps a whole whole portfolio of different services, please just kind of describe, just to get an idea of what you're already doing for the community. And what does your organization currently have? Oh, does your current organization currently have a system for dispersing and reporting cash assistance to clients? And if you do, please describe the system used. And the following is, if you don't have one, please describe how the new system will be managed, just so we have an idea of what you're going to, how you're going to be dispersing the cash. Next slide. The submission instructions. So the proposals are due to the office, to OIRA at 5 p.m. on Monday, May 6th. We'll need one copy of the application, which is just the cover letter and the narrative responses to the questions that I just presented. The completed application should be sent to the OIRA RFP at seattle.gov. And all the electronic copies of the application must be in a PDF or other non-editable format, so we don't inadvertently change our application. So the important dates that are upcoming, you're welcome to post any questions to us at that email address, and what we will review those questions and have the answers posted by Wednesday, April 24th. I didn't say the date of the first one, did I? So we will receive questions up until April 22nd, and we will post answers by April 24th, to give you time to submit the applications on May 6th at 5 o'clock. And we will review, then the team will review the applications from May 7th to 10th, and the decisions will be announced on May 13th. The appeal deadline, if you have any concerns to raise with us, will be May 17th, and the contracts, we hope, will begin May 20th. You have any questions? If you do, please raise your hand and we'll call on you to unmute. And then please know that any of the questions that arise during this session will also be included in that question and answer, in case for people who maybe did not attend this. But this video will also be posted on that same blog. So, okay, I guess we are officially into our Q&A session. So if you have anything, please do raise your hand and feel free to unmute. It looks like Louise,
hello.
Louise.
Hi there, I'm Luis with Colectiva Legal del Pueblo, and so I had a quick question in terms of like scope of work, and obviously like it's targeted more towards Pacific Islander communities. So we focus on like asylum and refugees coming into the States, right? And we do have majority of like what is being requested, like tracking systems, and like whether we've distributed this kind of like cash assistance before. We have like a model for that, but because majority of like the people that we do help are from like asylum and refugee seekers, would that impact our application if we were wanting to expand into the Pacific Islander community to try to help them as well, even though we're like limited on how much folks we have on that, but we're still wanting to increase that into work into that population, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think our focus is to try to reach the AAPI communities or organizations that serve AAPI communities. I would say in your application, if there are outreach plans that you have in place, or I would expand on that in the application process. I think that's how I would phrase it. If you do have existing cash distribution systems, I think that's worth expanding on in your application, as well as any outreach efforts that you might make to reach AAPI community members.
Awesome, thank you so much.
I think Segai, I saw Segai's hand first, and then Brandon.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm driving while I'm talking. My question is about victim who already affected. How far we go back to reward the award for those victims? Is that 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? How far is that? Because there are a lot of victims who are affected with this crime, and I want to know the duration time, like how far we have to go back.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So we're going back until up until 2020. And that's because that's when we started to see the rise in hate crimes and violence against AAPI communities. It correlated, it coincided with the start of the pandemic. So we want to make sure that folks who have been impacted during that time are also receiving support that they may need.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon?
Hi, thank you so much for your time and for this this time specifically. I'm with Utopia, Washington, and our office is located in Kent. We serve specifically, we focus on queer and trans Pacific Islanders, but we also just serve the Pacific Islander community in general, as well as the LGBTQIA+ community. I can say without a doubt that Pacific Islanders do not live in Seattle, nor do many of our resources are located in Seattle. And so I just wanted to clarify around the, especially on your page, it's for who should apply. There's the stipulation of having an office or offices located within Seattle. Specifically for our application, but really for any of the other PI orgs, none of us are located in Seattle. And so just wanted clarification on that language and eligibility.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so. In terms of the office serving it, and I see Almadea double checking or verifying too. I believe the requirement is that folks who you are serving are City of Seattle residents or Seattle residents. And that's just because of the restrictions that the city has on who it serves. Like it's primarily folks who live in Seattle, who work in Seattle, who go to school in Seattle. And so that's a requirement that we can't change for, just like legal reasons. That's who we're allowed to serve, unfortunately. But in terms of having an office location, that's not a factor. Or that's not a factor. It's more so who you're serving. So if it's if the person at hand or someone who lives in SeaTac applies, then technically they would not be eligible to receive dollars through this victim compensation fund. And that's just because of the Seattle nexus that exists. Like for legal reasons, we cannot extend it beyond Seattle residents.
Okay, thank you. Can it just be noted though that while I appreciate the purpose of the grant, like this is just one of those issues where is it like when the grouping for AAPI community comes together, they're like the PI community is basically left out because we don't live in Seattle. So this is it's a little rough. I don't want to raise any drama or anything, but like the reality is our communities aren't in Seattle, and so when a funding like this that comes out that names our community, it seems a little pointless because it's naming our community, but it doesn't realize that our community is not in the area that's able to serve and within the restrictions of the service. But thank you so much.
I appreciate that, Brandon. Thank you for flagging it as well. We'll definitely make a note of it. Thank you. So I believe your hand is still up, but it might just be that you forgot to raise it or put it down. Do you have a question?
No, I forgot. Sorry. I put down.
No problem. No problem. Luis?
Hi, yes. I wanted to add to that statement. I completely agree that a lot of the organizations that are doing the work are either in King County, but not in the Seattle area, or just like on the outskirts. And as it's been seen, there's a lot of funding gaps within nonprofits because majority of the funding is going to the city of Seattle, but a lot of the folks that are affected by this are on the outskirts. So then it makes it even harder for us to provide these services because the funds that are being allocated for the city of Seattle are missing its target audience by like a like a long shot. And so, is there any type of resolution that you all as the city of Seattle are working on to fix that gap, use that gap to ensure that the focus community that you all are wanting us to focus on can still get this fund, even though they're not even in the city of Seattle?
So within the city of Seattle, I just want to also clarify that this funding is not coming from an external source. It is City of Seattle dollars that we were able to partner with Human Services Department for. So it is coming from within the city, and we have legal restrictions as to who we could serve with our dollars. If, for instance, King County was managing this program, they could serve King County residents generally. They have the jurisdiction. They have the ability to serve everyone in King County, but within the city of Seattle, we're just operating within our own limitations as well. So it's not a lack of wanting to reach other folks in the county, but it's just simply there is a legal barrier that exists that we have to operate within when it comes to providing services for non-Seattle for Seattle residents. So within the city, we serve the city primarily. But when we partner, like for instance, OIRA partners with DSHS on legal services that pertain to naturalizations, we're able to serve Washington State, right? Like the whole Washington State, but that's because we have dollars from DSHS. In this particular instance, we're only working with city dollars. So that's the barrier that exists. And I just want to make it clear that it's not a lack of desire or a realization. Like we're taking everything that you're saying and appreciate it and recognize that. But it's just that we're operating in a very specific legal framework.
No, yeah, thank you. And I was just stating and asking, not to, to push buttons or anything, but just to see what issues are being, or like what solutions are being brought up. Just because I feel like a lot of the people that are requesting the need or the assistance in the matter, a lot of the time they don't qualify, right? Because they're not within the city limits. And so that's why I was asking. But thank you so much for that answer.
Of course, and we recognize that too as well. I think there's a lot of realizations that happens, right, too, like where we see that as the city becomes more expensive to live in, what impact that has on different immigrant and refugee communities, and how we're seeing, right, like folks moving to like more southern parts of King County, right? So I understand that, and I really appreciate you, both of you, for highlighting that, and we welcome that. We're making a note of it, definitely. Mohammed, I saw your hand raised up before. Do you still have a question?
Well, no, I think my colleague's questions was really you responded to what I was asking. But one little question. So do these limitations apply to both the ISAN and the one from the other one, or is it just because my understanding was last year ISAN was a bit more flexible because of it was the partnership with King County, and I understand that is not the case this year anymore. So would that also apply?
Yes, that is a good question, and yes, it would apply. Because we don't have the King County dollars anymore, we're now just able to serve City of Seattle residents.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to point out those other questions that are in the chat right now that we could read off and respond to. First from Amy, could we share the slides? Yes, we can, and we will post them on the blog at the end of this, along with all the answers to your questions. There's another one. Are there any immigration status requirements for the clients who are qualified for this funding?
No, so we do not ask for immigration status as so the answer is no to that.
I think this is more of just a comment from our colleagues, Oksana, the funding is coming from the City of Seattle taxpayers, and by Constitution, we are mandated to spend them for the purposes of City of Seattle. We cannot change the Washington State Constitution gift of public funds provision. So that's just a further explain why we have the limitation. There's another one. Does this geographical limitation apply to both grants? Oh, okay, I think you had asked that verbally. And yes, this time because they are City of Seattle dollars, it does. And another comment, has there been any pushback regarding city limits when it comes to funding? Is the city itself advocating?
I think Oksana's comment in the chat covers that as well. We are restricted by the state constitution as to who we could serve, or right, like who we could serve, and so advocacy. So I think that's just the answer to that. Like it's a state constitution. Oksana, do you want to add anything more to that?
Yeah, if I may, because I think it's such an important point that so many advocates bring up rightfully, but don't fully understand that these restrictions are not something that we can unilaterally change. And I might go just a tiny bit more into details about why we talk about this gift of public funds. So basically the idea is that when taxpayers or people who live in Seattle are taxed, their money are taken away into the city budget. There is a restriction that we can't give out this money to public for a reason beyond of serving the government purpose. So we can't give out free services. Let's say we can't give out, in general, free services unless it is for low-income people and it is the purpose of the city government that we are trying to serve. And the purpose of the city government, the City of Seattle, is to serve City of Seattle residents. So if we were to give out this money to low-income people in Kent or in Renton, we would be sued by Seattle taxpayers saying, why are you spending our money on something that you have no authority on? And so that's the idea of gift of public funds. It's not allowed outside of our jurisdiction and outside of low income status. So that serves the restriction. It is, as I said, is written into the Washington State Constitution. So when I see a question, if we are advocating, we cannot be advocating on this. Like what advocacy efforts would be probably appropriate and successful is for organizations like yours to go to broader jurisdictions like Washington State or the county or other cities and ask them to do similar funds like the City of Seattle is doing. That's it. And I'm sorry if I just went a little bit too deep into this thing.
No, that was perfect. Thank you, Oksana. Do we have any other questions? And if there's, if you have any questions that come up after this session, you're welcome to email us at OIRA@seattle.gov to ask any questions as well, and we'll be responding to those until April 22nd. Okay, well, we'll be here until the allotted time to welcome anyone who might come in later and answer any questions. You're welcome to stay with us, but feel free to hop off if you don't have any more questions, as this concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much for everyone who attended.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rhoda, and your colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you all. Then you could